Okay, so we're on the air. So thank you for anyone who has joined us this afternoon. This is a really informal conversation which has been spawned out of a lot of discussion that's been happening over the last couple of weeks with regards to the concept of mentoring or mentorship and trying to find a mentor for people that are curious about it. Some people are quite interested in how they might be able to help other people, what it entails. And we've got together a various group of people. If you want to take part, you can either join in via video here and be part of the conversation, or of course leave any questions you've got in the group chat. So this is in association with the designer Hangout.co, which runs the user experience design.slack.com. And my name is Andy. I am a UX coach and a digital consultant based in the UK. And we also have with us Adam, who I will let introduce himself in a moment. And we're going to kind of chair this a little bit and hopefully answer some of your questions. And if you've got any experiences that you've had with mentorship in the past or things that you want to ask, then we'll try and field those questions. So Adam, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
All right, I am a front-end architect, so I do development and UX work at Discovery Education, actually, recently. I just got another job, another full-time job, so I haven't done a lot of UX stuff there because they have a pretty established team, but it is pretty interesting to see their side of work from being a larger corporate entity, and I have had experience on both sides of the mentorship kind of field, being both a mentee and a mentor, so that's why I'm here today.
Okay, excellent. And we've also got with us Elizabeth, who was one of my inspirations and catalysts for actually running this Hangout. We've actually met briefly before in the past at an event last year. Why don't we start off with you telling us what your sort of main questions were, because I know you've got a lot of thoughts about trying to find a mentor rather than being a mentor. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm Elizabeth Chesters, and I'm an ex-developer, and I've just got my first job in UX consulting. So I'm in my 4th month, so I'm surviving and I'm getting through. I've loved UX all the way through, so I don't know, I think it's just because I've had so much doubt. It took me a long time to move careers because I was in such back-end job titles like client integration engineer. So at the moment, I feel like I know a lot of theory and I've read everything, I write a lot, but I've just not had the experience to get hands-on. And I'm struggling because I will bring things up and I'm very quickly like shot down. It's just like, oh, I've read this, and it's just like, well, in user testing, it's not like that. And I'm really struggling with balancing the theory that I have with actually proving it and making sure what I'm saying is not rubbish, essentially. And I don't know, I just need some guidance on how to solidify what I know.
Sure. So I mean, I can certainly resonate with that, and I think a lot of people can. And from my experiences to date, any of the people that have come to me to ask about mentorship, and I should say I haven't been doing it all that long, or not that I really think that I have. It's just over the last, well, coming up to about 18 months now, have been people in very similar positions. And it does seem that the vast majority are looking for someone to be able to talk to perhaps build confidence, I suppose is a good way of putting it, that are doing the same kind of things of like reading a lot about particular exercises or practices that they want to try out, and then feeling like they're perhaps not able to persuade people to do it, or to be able to kind of get it off of the ground. And I think that there is there's probably more people that are interested in that more confidence building side of things than anything else, or really to sanity check it. I mean, Adam, would you say the same kind of things from your experience of mentoring people, like what they're coming to you for?
Yeah, definitely. I think a large part of what, especially people who are newer to the field or people who are transitioning from, say, one part of the field to the other. So if you were mostly doing user research, or if you were mostly, your job title was like UX designer, but all you were really doing was wireframing, and you want to get into user research, a lot of what people are looking for is that validation that, yeah, I do know what I'm talking about. I think we talk about it all the time in the Slack chat, and even amongst just friends, is the whole imposter syndrome thing, and the idea that even if you know what you're doing, it always seems like the more you know, the less you think you know. So I think a lot of it is um, in mentoring. It's like I need validation that what I'm saying isn't, as you said, complete garbage, and the fact that, do I really know what I'm talking about? Am I kind of talking out of my ass a little bit, but is that okay? Um, and so it's a lot of it is that, and then I think a smaller subset of people who come into it are really like, I don't know how to do this. Can you teach me how? A lot more of it is, help me talk about what I already know in a more confident manner.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's, for me, the purpose of finding a mentor, and I'll explain sort of like how I've sort of ended up actually mentoring other people, was that like anyone else, there's been quite a few points in my career where I've had those same kind of thoughts. I think imposter syndrome is something which is actually quite rife, particularly in this industry, because so many people talk about user experience design still being a relatively young discipline or young skill set, when the reality of it is, when you start to break it down, it's actually not. A lot of it is just how you've probably always thought about doing things. And the key differences are the differences between the design thinking side of things, of how you approach problem solving, and then research-based work and that more academic side, if you like, of these particular exercises that we go through, or how you conduct this kind of activity. And most of the time, I don't think that I've had any like lack of confidence or hesitance in the way that I'm thinking being the right way of thinking. It's been about how do you actually execute it. And I really struggled to find someone who was going to teach me these things. And that's where I think there's a very interesting separation that occurs, because mentorship is not really so much about teaching people how to do a thing. That is a teacher, and we know that there's lots of resources to be able to get that, and you can go and do workshops with people to learn how to do particular exercises. You can read books, you can do all of these things, you can learn how to do something, but trying to find someone who's going to guide you through them and give you advice on how to round off the edges on some of the things that you do can be quite hard. My past experiences have always been that I try to seek the support of the person who's my manager, for example, which I think is kind of understandable. I think a lot of people probably do that. The problem is that I find with most businesses is that people that have ended up in a management role they didn't do it because it was that their main focus is, and their interest is actually about people and developing people and helping nurture people's skill sets. It's because it's a rung on the ladder, and they're just wanting to feel like they're progressing in their own career. And it's a very unique skill set, which I actually think most managers don't really have. So you lose that opportunity of where you expect that mentorship experience to come from. But what I have experienced in becoming a mentor myself is actually that it's quite difficult for you to be able to get that guidance and that level of support from someone who you work with, because most of the things that you're concerned about are actually internal. They're things about you, which is why I think this imposter syndrome is quite a big part of it. You don't want to expose yourself to your manager, for example, because some people might be worried that that is seen as, you know, a sign of weakness, or that you don't really know what you're doing, and then that's going to make your confidence worse, because you're going to feel like their confidence is waning in you, because you're going to them and asking them for advice on stuff which they perhaps think that you should actually know or that you should be able to do. And that's when I decided to start looking at outside of the companies that I was working in, because to be able to regain that confidence in what you're doing and yourself, and to be able to explore new avenues, you have to be able to be open with the person that you're talking to and that you're working with, and they have to be able to be responsive to that as well. So they've got to really understand who you are and what you're about, what makes you the way that you are, and the behaviour that you might show to other people. So finding someone from outside of your work then starts to make sense, and I guess the challenge after that is then finding the person that's going to work with you, and also being able to have some kind of purpose as to what you're doing. I'll just check and see what we've got in here. Duncan has said, I'm interested in the angle of mentoring, helping with long-term career guidance. Now, this is quite an interesting one, and I think Elizabeth has just sort of raised this as well, is that my experience to date has very much been that a lot of people that reach a point where they're trying to find a mentor are actually the people that are not feeling very happy in their job at that point in time. And that might be because they are full of all of these ideas and thoughts, but they're not in an environment where they're being encouraged to experiment with them and explore them. It's almost like the people that they work for feel like there has to be a guarantee. And a lot of it does become about career guidance, and that can be anything from, as Adam was just saying, about, you know, switching roles or switching like disciplines to completely different companies. I don't know whether, Adam, you've got any sort of thoughts on that, of like this, how much of it is really about learning practical skills, and how much of it is about understanding what you're about and whether what you're doing is the right kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. There are different, you can either get it from different people, or you can get into certain types of groups that specifically do career guidance type mentorship. Like there are larger groups that you can join that are often maybe 5 to 8 people, and they're called masterminds. And essentially what it is it is a group of like-minded people who have come together to kind of help each other do just that, to help each other talk about and learn from the other people in the group about their careers and what they're doing and how they could progress themselves either in their career or in the specific skill for goals that you have set. And you can be in mastermind groups for anything. That's not specific to any one field, but it's I think they are particularly popular with entrepreneurs and web-centric careers, where you really, especially if you're in a career that has a long tail, be it UX, or you're coming in as a junior designer or a junior developer, and you want to work up maybe one day to be CTO or CCO of a company, you don't know how to get there. Well, these people in these groups have experience further up the ladder or further down the line of this career, so they can help you work through some of that. I think one thing a lot of people tend to confuse or expect out of a mentorship role is that it is you, mentee, and singular mentor. Now, you can have a relationship like that, but you don't need one like that, and it doesn't necessarily, some people don't work best that way. some people work best in a group setting where it's less about, say, someone teaching me everything that I want to know, or me teaching someone everything they want to know, and it's more about us as a group of like-minded individuals helping each other. And I think that's why we have things like the Slack group that are wildly popular, because people want to be around like-minded people. That I think that would be closer to something you're looking for with long-term career guidance than a traditional like mentor-mentee relationship. You can get a mentor for a career, but it's probably not going to be the same type of mentor that you're going to get for something like teach me how to be better at UX. Like that, they could have some ideas on how to help further your career, even if it's not long term. It could be like, okay, well, I was in your position 2 years ago. This is where I am now. This is kind of what I did to get there. You can try to do the same thing, but it would be a lot less about, I am CEO of this global company. Here is everything you need to know to get to where I am.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that there's kind of sort of 2 points on there. The masterminds thing was something that I actually only recently got exposed to in the last year, which was through a different community which I'm involved in, based here in Brighton, called the Happy Startup Community, and they run regular mastermind groups, which are a small group of people each time of I think about 8 to 12 at the absolute most, and they run for a month where there's basically a hangout call similar to this, where you all get together to talk about what's going on with your businesses. So it's for people who are just kind of getting off of the ground, and it may be that someone needs some advice on I don't know, like setting up their tax accounts or something like that, or it could be actually about how to conduct some research to validate their business model. And it's curated by the individual who runs the mastermind group. So they get together people who they think, they've had conversations with and who they think might be able to support one another. And those have gone quite well, I think, and they definitely sort of create this sort of share learning cycle. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the Slack channel itself is very much this mastermind kind of group. It's thousands of people all over the world who are at very different levels in their career, but it's not just about like where you are within your career or your level of experience in something. It's actually just how you think about something, and being there to talk to somebody and give some advice or some suggestions or just to listen. And that's a really powerful thing. And I also agree on the concept of having multiple mentors. So in a slightly different approach, and if anyone's interested in understanding the difference between a mentor and a coach, I have a business coach who I worked with for 6 months last year. It's a very different structure, although there's some quite similar ways that the sessions are built up, but that was purely for me to understand about communication skills and how to be able to further develop the things that were going on in that particular area. It wasn't solely about, I want to improve workshop facilitation. I would actually go and find somebody else to be able to give me advice on that. So I think there's quite a big difference in what people think of it in, perhaps in terms of, say, like the kind of a cliched example, but Danny LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi have been this this mentor relationship. That's actually something that very rarely happens, and I think it's also really unfortunate, particularly in this industry, that we don't foster that within businesses, because that would be the ideal, this idea of that when someone brings someone new into their team, they're not just there to be able to utilize the knowledge and skills that new person brings to the team, but to also impart their wisdom on that other person.
just want to, before we move on, I want to circle back around to Duncan's other comment here that he thinks he would think that mentorship should be a two-way, or at least you're part of a chain where you are a mentee but a mentor of someone else. I would definitely agree with that. I know that as a mentee, sometimes it's a little hard to be, especially if you are a mentee in a situation where you are suffering pretty heavily from the imposter syndrome thing. It's hard to wrap your head around, well, what could I teach someone? I don't know anything myself. But as a mentee or as a mentor, I can tell you, you learn a lot from your mentees, whether it's about what you're mentoring them with. Maybe they have a different way of doing something that is actually better than how you were doing something because they came to it with a fresh perspective or a different perspective. Or a lot of times, mentors can be super grateful to a mentee simply because it helps them further their skills as being a mentor, which I know a lot of people who are on the mentor side do this because they enjoy helping people and they enjoy bringing other people up to their level. And so just having that opportunity to do that and do that better is really something that a mentor gets from a mentee that maybe they don't think about. And so it is more of a transaction than just that here's me helping you get better at what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the other thing is that I have most definitely found within the last year that putting myself out there and offering my time as a mentor has resolved a lot of the other issues that I was thinking about as well. So in particular around this sort of concept of imposter syndrome, it might actually just be that the reason why you feel like that is because you're never in a position where you have to explain something to somebody. And so what I've found is that my confidence has elevated massively by being able to meet these new people, really talented people, who've got very different things going on in their lives and different things that they want to be doing with their jobs. And to be able to just sit down for 2 hours every month and talk about what's going on with them and where they're trying to get to, and coming up with suggestions of how I may have approached it in the past or how I think it might work quite well for them, has greatly improved my confidence. So I definitely gain a lot from mentees, and I've certainly been shown new things because there might be something that someone's not sure about, and the easiest way for them to explain it to you is to actually show you what they're currently doing and go through it, and whether that's a particular part of a process that they're working on, or one of the big things that I've been doing over the last year with people is like persona development and experience mapping and journey mapping and story mapping and things like that, and seeing all these different ways that people do them has allowed me to be able to refine what I was doing and perfect it, and then be able to then share that back to the next person that I meet, because now I've kind of got another take on it and I can look at it from a different way. So I do think that it should always be a two-way street. This is not a classroom experience, which I know is something that I got asked quite a few times on Twitter last week in sort of the build-up to putting this together, of like what to expect. It's not here's homework, here's a lesson plan, here's what you're going to do, now go off and do it and I'll mark it when you come back. It's very much more conversational than that. I do try to, anyone that I work with, I try to get a real understanding of what the actual need they have is and what their goal is, and then we'll try and structure a bit of an idea of, okay, let's work together over the next 6 months, let's say, and we meet up once a month for a couple of hours. We talk about what's happened in the previous month, what we'd sort of touched on the time before, and see how that's evolved, and then what's the new challenge, what's the next thing that's facing you. It would be great to be able to do that on a more regular basis, but I also think with a lot of the work, in particular in user experience design that we do, that everything's usually bundled up in these like big discovery phases that happen at the beginning of projects, and there's not necessarily going to be an opportunity tomorrow to go and try the thing that you've been talking about. So you've got to kind of give a bit of breathing room. Like, how often do you spend with people that you mentor, and how often do you get in touch with your mentor?
Yeah, no, I definitely, it's probably about the same. We try to get together about once a month just to like sit down and have a larger conversation. Because as you said, with UX stuff and similar with development, but it's a little bit easier with development to have stuff to talk about or to be able to test stuff out because we're actively potentially doing something different every day. But it is a lot more hands off than, as you said, like being a teacher. Like, here's homework, come back tomorrow, let's see how you did. I do think something that I try to do as a mentor is just be available through messaging or email or something. And something that I think is also important for a mentee to understand is, if your mentor is available, that doesn't mean 24/7, 365 days a year. If you're having trouble or you have questions, go ahead and reach out to them. If they have the availability, they can reach back out to you. But again, this isn't a person who is a teacher. They don't have the ability to like hold your hand or walk you through something step by step, maybe every time you have a problem. That's why you try to schedule these bigger, more intimate meetings, ideally no further apart than, say, once a month or maybe every other month, because it allows you to have these conversations, to say, hey, I worked on this thing, but now I'm stuck. Where do I go from here? Typically a month is enough time for both people to think about what they talked about last time, how did they progress this time, and what can they talk about doing again next time. It's kind of like the one meeting that you get a month is kind of your sprint retrospective. It's like, oh, what did we do that was good last time? What did we do that was bad last time? How do we plan on doing it different next time? So it's kind of like that. Bringing into this conversation, David's last comment about having not really mentored before, but for one reason or another wanting to get more into it. There's always someone that knows less than you do. Always. It will always be like that. And there's always someone that knows more than you do. So again, just if you don't have a mentee, be available. If people have questions, go ahead and step in and try to help them out. Maybe find a way to be a mentor. That is one thing that I know is a little bit lacking in tools around mentoring and mentorship, is how do I find a mentor or how do I find a mentee? Like, unless you personally know someone or know someone through Twitter or through Facebook, it can be hard to say, hi, I don't really know you. Will you teach me how to be better at what I do? So that is definitely something that is a little bit lacking, is how do I get a mentor or how do I get a mentee? As far as Elizabeth's question here about how do you ask someone to be your mentor, David just jumped in and said, honestly, just ask him. I mean, it's kind of true. You don't really need to be formal about it. A lot of times, like I said earlier, mentors are glad to help. We enjoy teaching people what we know and kind of raising everyone up to our level, because when we allow people to get better, when we help people get better, it makes the industry as a whole better, and as Andy said, it makes you better at what you do. And then it's just kind of who you know. My first job, I was actually super lucky. The person who was my mentor at my first job actually went to the same university that I did. So we had a lot of the same language. We already had that connection, and it was more about help me as a student just out of university get better at what I do. And he had already been working at this job for 3 or 4 years at this point. So he knew a lot of the ins and out of what the day-to-day work was, and he was able to help me kind of set my guidelines so that I could progress down this career. And that wasn't even so much like I didn't have to ask. It was just kind of a given. Like, hey, you're new. I'm going to kind of mentor you through this, and then we just kind of developed that relationship, and now we're great friends. We talk all the time. So I try to do that a lot with whether it's new people to a company or new people to a group of friends that I have. If someone has questions, I just try to a lot of times jump in and answer those questions. And then if that wants to develop into a more serious relationship, then you already have this kind of understanding that I can help you, you can help me, and then you just build that into the mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, I think there's a difference here, which I think is very much part of the problem, is that I suppose a lot of people are looking for a formal relationship, and that is actually really difficult to come across. And so I am registered on uxpauk.org, which I found in the process of trying to look up, how to find a mentor myself at the time, and that's it feels formal because it's part of an organisation, and I think that can potentially be a really good way of being able to find people. Obviously, in an academic environment, you're accustomed to that. There's always you sort of get assigned someone that is going to be able to help you with these kind of things, and that just doesn't exist in the business world. But the idea of developing an organic relationship with somebody, I think, is far better. And I think that you'll probably find that a lot of the time you don't actually realise that you just haven't given it a name. It's really about trying to find that person that is doing the thing that you want to be doing, or that you're currently doing, and being able to talk to them and talk to them about work and just see how it evolves. And if you want to stick a label on it, then you can. I suppose that's slightly different to say like the structure that goes through UXPA, where there is some good guidance and advice, and I'll chuck that into the message box, link to their sort of mentoring section. But it really is about people, and I certainly had the same kind of experiences as you, Adam, with a few people that I've ended up just talking to for a long period of time. Like maybe there was a thing that they wanted to build, or they'd had an idea about how to do something. I've had friends that aren't within the industry, but still perhaps do online stuff. So a lot of my friends are in marketing, and there's been plenty of instances where they've said about a particular problem that they're having with arguments about something, like the classic arguments of like what goes on the homepage or whatever. And I've gone through and talked to them about, well, I would run this workshop on how this particular design game, and we'll talk about it, and then that'll end up into can you come over and show me how to do it? And those kind of things just end up sort of like naturally occurring. So in terms of your sort of questions on that, Elizabeth, I think it's very much entirely up to you how you want to go around it. You can look at things like UXPA, for example. I think IXDA may have similar things. If you do search around there are a few sort of groups that sort of profess themselves as mentoring. I've also noticed a lot more people are being vocal and public about it, which obviously I'm doing at the moment. But I think that hopefully over the next year that's actually going to become something which certain people within this industry that, let's say, have got slightly bigger profiles than some of us are going to be making more of a banging a drum about, because they're starting to realise that it is actually really important. So I can think of at least 3 well-known people at the moment in the UK who have recently updated their websites to talk about this, that they are mentoring people, and ultimately it's free. I think that's also a really important part. I've debated this quite a lot recently about whether this is a paid service or not. I don't think it should be. I think that this is about sharing knowledge, and if you want to share knowledge, then knowledge should be free. So I mean, I know we're sort of like joking in the comment thread here, but in all honesty, everything that I do with people is very sort of split in terms of locations. Sometimes it's in the evening, and we will go to a bar and find somewhere to sit that's quiet. But there's some disadvantages to that as well, which is I think that it's very difficult to have a very personal relationship with someone like that in a public space. So I have my office. You know, we can come here and we can talk, and pretty much just a cup of coffee and some biscuits is all I really expect in return for my time. So let's just, seeing as we're kind of talking about you as if you're not a real person here, Elizabeth, have you got any questions or thoughts that you have on that you would like to share with us?
A few. I think it's been brought up as well at the previous event I went to, that everyone seems to want like this one person thing. And I remember actually tweeting as well, like, you find mentors everywhere, which is a completely valid point. I think what I'm looking for at the moment is, because I'm still wanting to build up my experience, and especially the portfolio is more important. I think I've got so much enthusiasm, I just need to channel that somewhere and actually put what I have into practice, I suppose, and having someone. But then you mentioned that is more teaching, and I think personally I need to sit down and just be like, what is it that I need? Because I've got experiments to run and things and articles to write, and it's just, I want to do it now. I don't want to wait till like Christmas.
Yeah, so it sounds maybe that I think finding someone that you can talk to on a regular basis would definitely help with that, because it's having motivation. I think it can be really difficult as well if you've got your group of friends aren't from this world, if you like. They do very different stuff. It's quite hard to explain to somebody what's going on to be able to get the right kind of feedback and that motivation to drive forward. And I think that a mentor can absolutely do that for you. It's actually verging on this sort of like tilting, what I see as being this tilting point between the difference of a mentor and a coach. And I think like UX coaching is something which is still definitely in its infancy in terms of like a term, but it's not that unusual. And the difference between a mentor and a coach is that a mentor is someone who has a wealth of knowledge in a subject that you're interested in or that you want to learn more about, and it's about them imparting that knowledge to you and providing you with whatever you feel is necessary to be able to do it. A coach works in a very different way, which is that a coach knows you well enough to be able to see that you actually know what you're doing and what you need to be doing. And what you need is just that push and that motivation to get you there, and to try and understand what exactly it is that's blocking you from making that happen, so that you can get on with it, because you do actually know what to do. It's just there's things happening there. That side of things I'm still exploring. It's what I'm doing for businesses and teams, and not so much for individuals at the moment. But with any mentorship relationship I've had, there's always this tilt point where it's the questions that are being asked, I know that person has the answers to. So then the way in which we communicate and work through things has to change. It's less about me showing and explaining, and it's more about me continue questioning. And it's quite weird, because it is very much a UX sort of model, because it's just changing the question process. It's more of the why, 5 whys and things like that to get someone to break through what's going on. But it can be really hard to do with yourself, like on your own. It can be a real challenge. I think for you personally, and for anyone else actually, really that's in the southeast of England, I spoke to Monica, who is sort of organising the chapter of UXPA there is a meetup which is in September. Apparently the details are going to be put out somewhere towards the end of this month, which I think is it's really just like a conversational point. It's for people to get together to sort of talk about their experiences and what's going on within, like trying to find mentors. And it might be worth just keeping an eye out on that and seeing when that event comes up, and to check things, still like local meetups and stuff like that you can go to is a really good place to do it. And as Adam was saying, I think I can think of, like, if you're in coding and that side of things, stuff like code clubs and code schools, that kind of thing, where it's local community meetups where you can go and help somebody out. In terms of like becoming a mentor yourself, not in a formal sense, it doesn't have to be formal, but just being able to share your knowledge with other people, I think you'll find actually reinstills that confidence in with you, and maybe you'll get that focus that you need of going, okay, this is actually what I need to do next, and I'm going to work on this little side project, and to be able to show these particular things in my portfolio, if that's what your goal is, of like trying to build up that the portfolio side of things and showing what skills you have.
Yeah, I would say probably like Andy had just said there, being able to have the opportunity to explain why you did something or why you thought about something to someone else, whether it's in a mentor relationship, a coach relationship, or just two people hanging out, is wildly more valuable than people think it is. When you, especially to people, other people who understand what you're talking about. My wife knows nothing about what I do, so when I try to talk to her or talk about my day to her or explain something to her, a lot of times it's after 5-10 minutes I get a blank stare, and she has no idea what I'm talking about. And so that's the sort of thing where, like, cool, I got no feedback whatsoever on what I'm doing is good or bad, or I'm the greatest person in the world, because you have no idea. You have no feedback from that because they don't understand on the same level what you're talking about. So when you do get that opportunity, even if it's just at a meetup or with a group of coworkers out for drinks after work, to talk through what you're thinking and your process, and you can get that sort of validation or even slight pushes in, this is the direction you should go as opposed to this other thing that you were thinking. That little bit can help instill confidence and can help you kind of build up what you're looking for to get to a level where you're more comfortable in what you're doing and talking about what you're doing. Again, going back to what Andy had brought up about kind of the difference between a coach and a mentor, it's definitely something that's more, I think, understood in the startup world, because a lot of startup teams or the people founding a company will have a coach, or their first angel investor will be their coach, trying to get them to get more funded, because of course the investor at the end of the day wants more money. So if they can get the company more funded, they can sell it bigger, they can get more money. That coach idea, I don't think, is something that has translated to UX or to development out of the startup world quite yet. I think we're starting to get there. Again, with mentors not being something that's super solid in the UX world right now, it's a little weird to try to be like, oh, you don't need a mentor, you need a coach. But sometimes that's what it is. It's you already. I think it's just putting a label on what everybody's trying to say. A mentor is more, like Andy said, sharing knowledge with you and getting you to grow as an intellectual, where a coach is, you already have all of this knowledge inside of you, let's pull it out. So as a coach, it could be like Andy said, knowing that you have the answers to these questions that you're asking me. Well, how do I ask a question back to you that gets you to answer your own question? Where a mentor could potentially just answer that question for you because you may not have that knowledge. And I think a coach is someone that you want to have if you're looking to build up that confidence more and build up, well, do I know what I'm talking about? How do I talk about this better? When I think about coaching, I've had coaches help me with like public speaking or writing. One of the things that I think about when I think about a coach versus a mentor is I think they're called Toastmasters. I don't know if the same thing exists around the world, but we have people in the Slack channel who talk about, oh, I'm in this Toastmasters group and they're helping me be better public speakers, and I have to write this speech for this thing, and then I have to give this speech. To me, that's more of like a coach relationship than a mentor relationship, where it's about putting yourself out there because you know, or they know that you already have the answers, so they want you to do something to bring those answers out of you, rather than a mentor just kind of helping you find your way to the answers.
Yeah. And the Toastmasters thing is something that I've come across as well, because I was being more and more encouraged at work to do public speaking, which I don't actually have a problem with. I think it was more of trying to really think about what it was that I wanted to be speaking about and how to do that delivery. So I mean that is very much an international thing, I think, and quite like a formal body, if I remember rightly. Like there's a whole like organisation of Toastmasters or something like that, I think. So there are those sort of more formal ones. I've also just added in a couple of links into the chat there. The last one being the ixda.org, which I know we've got people in the Hangout, in particular, I think in the possibly in the enterprise and events channels, who are members of that, or people that help organise those local groups. They are all over the world, and it is just it's another public meetup or hangout to go to. But those are most certainly the places where you'll be able to find the opportunities. Because I think one of the things is that there's something that we often forget is that for the most part, everyone that's in this industry is very accessible. They're either available to talk to on Twitter, although obviously not everybody actually bothers to reply, but their email address is bound to be kicking around somewhere. A lot of us are writing blogs on what we're doing and everything, and if you read something that someone has written or you've seen a talk and you're interested in what they said, and start a conversation with them, even if it's by email, and ask the questions that you're thinking of at that time, because that might be a way of that relationship sort of starting out. There's plenty of people out there who you think might actually be quite unattainable and you wouldn't be able to approach, but I assure you that if you write an email to someone, anyone who's on a speaking list for a conference, for example, if you were to write them an email to say that you'd seen their talk and that you had some questions about it, or that you'd really like to know more about it, and did they have a bit of time to maybe get together on Skype or something just to sort of talk about those things, you'll probably find that you will actually get a response, and that again can be a really good way of sort of building up that knowledge set. But definitely don't try and limit yourself to one specific person unless you have one very specific goal in mind. So I just wanted to see whether there was any other questions that people had sent me from anywhere else, but I think that might be all I had on my list. So that I got sent a message through Slack earlier today from Joanne Finch. It's kind of covering sort of similar things of this idea of a career mentor, and that they're actually at a lead level in a digital agency, wanting to become more strategic, and I think that's definitely an area where I found myself in quite a few times. and I've spoken to people in the past. I think really it's just more just trying to sort of emphasize the point of the fact that it doesn't matter where you are in your career. As Adam said earlier, it's everyone wants to learn something new and bring it on from somebody else. I actually think from the back of this conversation, what might be a very helpful thing for us to do, and we'll see what the best way of organising it is, to see whether we can actually put together some kind of masterminds group with some private hangouts that we run every month, let's say, to talk about these things with a group of people. So we'll put that out to the Slack community and see if anyone would be interested in doing that. I certainly would. There's always plenty of things that I can think of that I want to know. And David says that's a great idea as well. So thank you, David. I can see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there. As someone who is on our Slack group when most of the mods are up and awake and at work, because unfortunately I do think a lot of the Slack group is more Western shifted. I actually, in the AMA channel, when I posted that we were live, someone actually had said, oh, it's really cool to have more stuff in EU time zones. So I think that's really great that we were doing this. But I do know that roughly, I think 60% of all of the conversations that are had in the Slack channel are had through private messages. So I do think a large group of the people in the community and people just in the field as a whole would be interested in more quote-unquote formal mastermind type things, or sharing of knowledge type things. I know we've, as the mods as a whole, have kind of come together and kind of made our own, just because we end up talking about so much stuff having to do with the community anyway. A lot of times people feel like, hey, I can ask you this question, or I can share this with you because we are all having these conversations anyway. Can I get your input on this other thing that I'm working on? And that's, I mean, that was kind of our whole goal with building a community like this, is being able to bring people together and have them just kind of hang out and talk and grow these relationships. And then if you do have a question, or if you need help with something, you have the ability to say, hey, I'm working on this other thing, maybe you guys can help me out with it.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. Obviously, I want to make sure that we don't spend too much time, because I appreciate that anyone that is observing this, whether it's through YouTube or Google Plus, is probably on their lunch break, being that we have set this up so that it is suitable for people in the UK and Europe. I guess just to sort of round things off, really, if there's any thoughts that people have about whether they would want to mentor other people within the Slack group, I think that would be a really good place to start. Of perhaps we'll try and find a sensible way of being able to create some kind of directory, I suppose, of people that are open for mentorship, or perhaps people who are looking for people to mentor them. I think that would be a really good approach to getting things going. And if anyone is interested in doing mastermind groups, maybe on what's going on with what you're doing over the next couple of months, we'll see if we can get that going. And Tinder for mentors, yes, we could try that. I think it'd just be it depends and a question mark for every single person, which direction do you want them to go in. Obviously any sort of further questions, I think pick it up on Twitter, obviously emails, they're around. I'm always happy to speak to people. I'm sure that Adam is as well, about any questions you might have, or really just to be able to start having that conversation with somebody and talk about what's going on with what you're doing. Is there anything that we haven't covered from your perspective, Elizabeth?
No, not really. I think it's just learning what a mentor is and what to expect of someone. Like if I ask them to be my mentor, and having that line, I think for myself as much as anything, that it's not going to be teaching. They're not just going to be there to give me all the answers, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It is a frustration. I admit. There's been plenty of times where I've just wanted someone to show me how to do the thing. Just let me do the thing. But it's a it is a personal. I think it's a personal experience, and that's not to say that someone who's a mentor isn't going to show you how to do something or show you a different way of doing something. But it definitely helps. I think that the key things for me, if I was trying to sort of give advice to someone who's looking for a mentor, is have a very specific goal in mind. You know, take into consideration what you tell your clients and your colleagues every single day. Do one thing and do it really well. Have that focus of that one thing. That might actually help you in finding the right kind of person, because then you can go and seek out that person who you feel has got the most knowledge in that particular area. So whether that is that you are currently a graphic designer and you want to transition into user experience design as a practice, and you want to learn more about tactical work like the actual exercises, or you're more interested in strategic thinking and how to approach problem solving that way, try and find someone that is writing about that kind of thing and that you agree with what they're writing as well. I think that's one of the most important parts. Like, don't ever go and pick someone because they're considered as being like, the best in the industry or whatever, and go and target that person, because there's a good possibility that you won't actually get on with them. It is a personal thing. It does become a friendship in a kind of way. There's lots of things that you could be focusing on. So just focus on one, and try and work with them to kind of get an idea of like what period of time you want to spend on it. Like not in terms of like the investment of time of like, oh, how long are our sessions and things, but how long do you want to keep this engagement going for? And it can stop and start as many times as you want. But really, it's just I go with this rough structure of like 6 months. Six meetings with somebody about trying to achieve a particular goal. Usually works out right, and then we get to the end of that and we evaluate where we are, and if we feel like there's more that we can learn from one another, or that they can learn from me, or vice versa, then we'll repeat the process. So have some form of commitment. This is something that you want to sort of go into if you're going to have these more sort of like formal structure around it. And like Adam was saying, like also hopefully it should be a very open channel as well. You should be able to grab them for a question on something at any point during the week and just send them a Skype message or whatever. Is there, Adam, have you got any sort of like closing thoughts on what you should be looking for in a mentor?
I mean, I guess kind of like what you should be looking in a mentor is just kind of like you had already said, somebody who you kind of agree with either what they're writing or what they're talking about or what they're thinking, and not looking for someone who either you or the community as a whole has put up on this pedestal and maybe you don't agree with, because yeah, you might be able to learn something from them, but if you don't get along with them, it's going to be rough on everybody. And then I think, as you had said already, Twitter. Use Twitter all the time for everything. People think it's funny that, like, oh, you reached out to this person through Twitter, or oh, you're just tweeting random nonsense. But it still amazes me how accessible people can be if you just reach out and send them something. And sometimes it's through an email, sometimes it's through a direct message through something, but at the same time, I know people who may get a little weirded out or disturbed if you send them an email for something that's not hey, I want to pay you for this. Or maybe they just don't check their email as often, or their email is only for work. I've reached out to people before on Twitter and just been like, hey, I read your article. Would you be interested in talking a little more about it? Or even just retweeting someone's tweet or sharing someone's article. It's just that little thing that gets their attention and then puts you in their mind to be able to maybe down the road you can have a deeper conversation with them. I going to conferences is always great, especially if someone who you want to be a potential mentor or someone who you kind of just want to pick their brain is speaking at that conference. If you have been following them for a while and you maybe comment on some of their posts and you retweet some of their posts and then you go to their talk and you take notes on their talk, you're building this. You're getting all this knowledge from them, which is great. That's kind of like the one-way mentorship street. It's just, oh, you're throwing all this knowledge on the internet and I'm grabbing it all. But at the same time, if you're actively engaged with them in whatever community they're in, or if you're both in a community together, you may have the opportunity to actually talk to them at a conference, and then that can either be a relationship or it can be someone who you could just ask them like, hey, could I shoot you a message if I have a question on this thing that you just gave a talk about, because you clearly know what you're talking about. So it's just kind of stuff like that. Social media, I know it's kind of cliched that like use social media to network and build your connections, but it really is what it is, especially in our industries, because like you had said earlier, Andy, a lot of people in our industry are super open to talking to you and are really friendly. And yeah, every once in a while you run into that person who's kind of a jerk, and then you just don't talk to them anymore. But most of our industry is open and willing to help you with your problems or talk to you through your problems. And if you can do it in more of an open forum, then maybe you help somebody else who has the same question down the road. So I definitely wouldn't be afraid or nervous to just reach out to someone and say, hey, I saw you did this thing, or I have this question. You never know what that could turn into.
I think that's a really nice point to finish up on. It's certainly, I mean, let's not forget this whole entire thing has come about from a group of complete strangers talking in a Slack channel over the last couple of weeks about this topic. So it proves that you can reach out to people and that people will respond, and they will respond in kind. So we'll wrap this up and we'll take it back into the Slack channel and see if we can organise a few more collaborative events and meetups and things, and hopefully we'll start buddying some people up and see if we can elevate our skills, and maybe we'll start our own agency, all based on the belief of sharing knowledge and learning. So thanks very much for your time, everybody, and this is me signing off.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.